What's up, guys? Welcome into today's episode. We've got a good one for you as South Carolina celebrates the 4th of July with a massive 4-star prospected commitment from Noah Clark. Noah Clark out of North Carolina becomes the latest and the 10th overall member of this year's signing class. We talk about where he fits in this defense, what he brings to the table, and how quickly can he get on the field. I think it's pretty early. Then we also talk about 3 shocking stats that I was not aware of that South Carolina has to improve on if they're going to make the college football playoff. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked on Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked on Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, and thank you for tuning in and making Locked on Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode brought to you by our friends at the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today and start saving on tickets and entertainment and all of those things. Just download the app, use the code Locked On College, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Use Game Time app right now, and fun was around the corner. Here we go. So today's episode, we have a good one for you. We're going to talk about the latest commitment from South Carolina. Noah Clark committed a couple days ago. Massive 4-star recruit out of North Carolina. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about some of the numbers now of what that does for this year's class, where it ranks, and where it's trending, and the latest on some other commits you also have coming down the pipe in the month of July that are on South Carolina's board and feel really good about. So talk about that. And then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about some stats that I was unaware of, and I wish that I still was unaware of because they are not good. But we talk about 3 specific stats that South Carolina has to improve on if they are going to be a college football playoff contender this year. So let's get into the news about Noah Clark. I believe this was on Wednesday. Noah Clark commits to South Carolina. I mean, big time recruits, and I mean that as literally as possible because this kid is like 6'4", 330 pounds, has weighed up to 368 pounds, and is a guy that, listen, at that size, he can play right away. And when you think about it, like, most oftentimes you hear about a high school kid, especially that plays this position, that is 6'4", almost 360. That feels like you have got to be a project that you have to get into, like some sort of training program, probably cut a little bit of weight before you see the field and blah, blah, blah. However, turn on the tape, and I know it's at the high school level. I don't know if that translates as well to college because we haven't seen it yet. But the athleticism that this kid has is almost more impressive than the size. I mean, the athleticism is next level. Able to get like run kids down to the sideline, not sideline to sideline necessarily, but like has enough speed at that size to where he can get after a back and get laterally and all that kind of stuff, as well as the burst off the snap, being able to get to the backfield. The biggest thing I love about this kid, besides the size and athleticism, is the fact that at that size, he is physically ready and comparable to 4th, 5th year guys across the offensive line that are going to be playing against him. He is going to be able to step in day one and be physically able to get on the field and provide valuable minutes, valuable snaps, and give you instant depth and also instant impact for him at a position of need. Listen, there's a lot of 4-stars you brought in last year's class, and it felt like a lot of them probably needed a year to develop, and that's fine. That happens a lot. Not a lot of kids come out of high school ball and then go right into college, and they're like, oh, I can play at this level, and everything will just be free and easy. We're fine. No, a lot of times you're going to need to grow a year. You're going to have to learn the system, all that kind of stuff. But at this specific position, you need guys that can step on the field right now. And Noah Clark is a guy that can step on the field right now. And I love the fact that he's got that athleticism because he's bigger than the guys you had a year ago. And we'll see where that translates in college. But that's a guy that is physically capable and physically ready to go on the field and compete for you the day he steps on campus. Now, he becomes the 10th commit in this class, and he's the 7th 4-star recruit. I keep talking about this, and part of it's because I'm a nerd when it comes to the numbers and stuff. And the other part of it is because it's hard not to be excited over it, considering you've never seen this before, at least under Shane Beamer. I'll have to do a deeper dive on some of the numbers like in the past, like recruiting classes, but you look at like what they have in the past couple of years, like 70% of your class right now is a blue chip recruit, a 4-star or better. And our buddy Bud Elliott, who does the Cover 3 podcast and all that kind of stuff, he came with this metric a couple years ago, and it seems so obvious, and it basically is said like, what's the blue chip ratio for each of these teams? And no team has won a national championship with a blue chip ratio under 70, or I think it's under 50%. So he puts out his ranking every year and says like, hey, here's the rosters of every single team that has a blue chip ratio of over 50%. Here's basically who will be in contention for the national title. South Carolina, I don't know what the roster blue chip ratio will be. And keep in mind, it's only where they rank out of high school. That is a detriment probably for South Carolina to rank high on that, strictly because, I mean, they recruit well out of high school, but they also do so well in the portal with guys that are kind of overlooked and former 3-stars. But right now, you are 70% in this class, and you're still trending up really, really well for several guys. Darius Gray, the 5-star interior offensive lineman that's between you and LSU. You feel pretty good about that. Tomorrow, Samari Matthews is going to make his announcement. It sounds like it's between South Carolina and Texas. It feels like it's Texas is going to throw some money in this, and like it's been back and forth, but like everything you're hearing now is like kind of more leaning to Texas, but we'll see. Like we saw the other day with PJ Dean, like things can change at the very last minute, good or bad. Tamarian Watkins, you feel good about, and then Landon Duckworth is going to announce later this month, and he is South Carolina is a heavy favorite to land him. So I know it's early. The hay's not in the barn. There's still a lot of time left, and you don't want to overact recruiting in June, like until the ink's dry in December. But 70% blue chip percentage and blue chip ratio of your recruiting class is the highest that you've had under Shane Beamer. And you talk about his last 3 years, right? 65% was the highest. Then you had 50%, 46%, and 23%. I mean, the 65% is great. But again, you're just continuing to improve. And this is the way I think I look at it mostly is we have seen how good Shane Beamer and the staff can be and how well they can like develop and how good of coaches they can be with rosters that are primarily 3-stars. Like we've seen that. I feel comfortable if they land classes that primarily are 3-stars because of that track record. But what does that look like if those same coaches who are really good at developing and really good at coaching and seem to like kind of outdo or expectations, especially last year, what does that look like when you start getting blue chip players and the roster turns from 3-stars to primarily 4 and 5-stars? It feels like the sky could be the limit there, but without getting ahead of our skis and getting ahead of ourselves, there's still a lot of time left. I just love the fact that it's still trending in that direction. The other number it's very interesting to me is this. You look at where they rank right now. They rank 19th in the country because, of course, they are. That seems to be where they always rank. It's like 18 to 22. We talk about it all the time. So they're 19th in the country in the On3 rankings, right behind Ole Miss. You're still top 20, whatever. But you look at the ranking of where they are for player ranking ranking per player. Okay, each player has like a number that they are ranked. Like in addition to the 4-star, it's like 0.99 or whatever it is. Their per player ranking that they have right now is 9th in the country, and it's right behind Georgia. And if you listen to the show the other day, you heard exactly how much of a tear Kirby Smart and Georgia have been on, and you also are familiar with how good they usually recruit in general. But you're in the top 10 in that metric, which is way more important than like just like the whole quality over quantity type thing. Like any way you want to look at it, the amount of talent you're bringing in per player is better than it's ever been, and you are in a situation where you could end up being ranked around the top 10 with those other what I would consider like recruiting dynasties and blue bloods: Georgia, LSU, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas. You're right there with them. So if you could figure out a way to close like that, I think the coolest thing and the most exciting part about this, guys, is I know I'm nerding out about it. I know I'm getting like way too ahead, like far ahead of myself sometimes with this, but it does kind of have this feeling that this is not just a novelty or a an anomaly in a year. It feels like this is what the new norm is going to be at South Carolina. And that's why it's so exciting. So before we move on to the next part of the show, do want to tell you real quick about our friends at the Game Time app. Listen, we've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever to get concert tickets, waiting for them to go on sale, only lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. You're in the queue, you're waiting for the queue, whatever the queue is, all that kind of stuff, and it only leads to disappointment. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that is where Game Time comes in play. Listen, I've told you about them. I used Game Time to get my tickets to Creed last year, and I don't regret it for a second. It was amazing, and they have the best customer service and the best available options right at your fingertips to get, what do you call it, up close and to anyone you want to see, whether it's comedy, whether it's music, whether it's like a sporting event, any of it. Game Time app has it all. Listen, they make getting concert tickets especially faster and easier than ever. Prices drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals every single day. Take the guesswork out of buying your concert tickets, okay? And use the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, all capital letters, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, when we come back, I'm going to tell you about a couple of stats that ruined my day. A couple of them that are good too, some positives in there, but there are 3 specific things that South Carolina has to get better at in the box score if they're going to want to compete for a college football playoff spot. We talk about the shocking number right after this. All right, welcome back into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Special 4th of July episode. A little bit all over the place today, but that's kind of par for the course. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you to everyone that reached out on social media today. This is July 2nd. We were supposed to record then, but just things got in the way, work and packing, all that kind of stuff. It's been officially 1 year of doing the show. So I want to say thank you. You guys were incredible. We had 875,000 downloads, listen, views, all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate it. You guys have been great. I love doing it, and I'm very, very excited for the next year. Anybody that's listened to the show over the last year knows a couple of things. 1, I talk too fast. 2, I move my hands all around constantly. 3, let's see. I probably say a lot. I don't know. But I also love deep dives and love numbers. And when I started doing the show last year, I remember looking at stuff and I was like, all right, where do we want to begin? And I was like, let's go find like numbers that can like feel positive and start like getting familiar with the team, all that kind of stuff. We're a year in, and so like there's a lot of positives that we talk about constantly. I'm not going to talk about negatives per se, but I as much as we've talked about like how people are like sleeping on South Carolina and how it seems like they still get all this disrespect, all that kind of stuff, there are some things that being self-aware and like looking at this team and being objective about it, there are some things they have to get objectively better at. And like, I was looking at this the other day at 3 specific like stats that have to be better. And as I'm putting it together, it was pretty general, like to start. And then the third one, it was just like, my God, just not good. You already probably know where this is going. And we're going to do 3 sets for today on offense. Because that's primarily where you had your problems last year. And you primarily had them on the offensive line. I have to see a number lower than 41 in the sack column this year. They just have to see it. And what's mind-blowing about this stat is like they gave up 41 sacks last season. Okay? It's the second straight season they have allowed 41 sacks in a season. But you had Spencer Rattler one of those years, which makes sense because he's not very mobile. And then you had Lenore Sellers the next year. And I think that looking at that number and figuring out how 41 times Lenore Sellers was somehow brought down, especially when you look at like the Clemson game, the Mizzou game, and like so many different examples of like he is a nightmare to bring down. Like a nightmare to bring down. And he is so good at evading the rush. stepping up in the pocket and either making a choice of either coming up to tackle him or let him run. But when you do that, then people get open and all that stuff. That's one of the reasons he's so effective. But 41 sacks, I feel like the initial reaction from some people is, well, Lenoris has probably taken too many of those. And I think early on in the year, he probably did. But you got to show some improvement here on the offensive line. The offensive line has just been so bad at South Carolina for 2 straight years. And the year they had with Spencer Rattler when he was the quarterback, it wasn't the sacks that was like the most glaring deficiency and issue on this roster and with the offensive line. It was their inability to run the football. That's one of the reasons I was scared about with Rocket Sanders coming here, because that's a great back, but you have to be able to open some holes from him. And so last year the offensive line did better. I think they will be better this year. And I think that, like, when you talk about what you have at left tackle, which is Isaiah Thompson, and how battle tested he is now, because he had some rough stretches last year. He was ranked, according to PFF, as like one of the lower ranked like players in the offensive line in the entire conference. But he's a freshman, and you fully expect the upside and talent that kid has and the potential to kind of be opened up this year, no matter what. So I say all that. Say you got to give me a number under 40. You just have to give me a number under 40. That's setting the bar way too low, by the way. Like, if you can somehow get it under 30, that's a massive improvement, and feels like it only translates to even more success. The second stat, gotta have or do a better job of. Last year, Lenore Sellers, Captain America, our favorite Gamecock. There were some times early on where he made us all pull our hair out and lose our minds a little bit because of the fumbles, right? It reared its ugly head late in the season at one point against Clemson too. But there's a, like, you look at like quarterbacks and you immediately look at the touchdowns, interceptions, all that kind of stuff, and make sure you're not turning the ball over a ton at that position. And he only had 4 interceptions in his final 6 games. He got much better there. But fumbling the football, you have to protect the football at all times. You just have to. All right, so you got to protect the football. We all know that. The volume, I have a hard time saying it without like getting frustrated, because it's such a massive. The sheer volume of it, it's too much. But it also makes me think like that number is so high that of course it has to go down this year. But the numbers, 11 total fumbles last year, the most of any quarterback in the entire country. 6 fumbles lost, also the most in the entire country. It's not the fact that you had that happen. It's the fact that I constantly throw out the stat of the 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions to close out the year, and it was 17 touchdowns total, like rushing and passing combined. But you have to start also looking at some of like the other parts of this, and like, yeah, that's fantastic that we only had 4 interceptions in the final 6 games. That's a tremendous amount of growth in a spot where he was mostly criticized. That was like the biggest criticism it felt like that he had was his passing and his inaccuracy and all that kind of stuff, right? But 11 fumbles, 7 interceptions, so you end the season with 13 total turnovers. Not a crazy amount for a first-year player, but it just makes you feel like, man, like, if you just get half of those, like if you just go half of those, what is the ceiling for Lenore Sellers? Like what? How much bigger does it get? How much higher does it get? Because we know what he's capable of doing. If you just freaking protect for him, and he puts 2 hands on the football and doesn't let it come out of his hands, like, I don't feel like it's embellishing or being a homer or getting caught up in the moment. It just feels like this is it becomes like almost like unstoppable type team, like because he's just so good. So those are 2 that right there off the bat you have to get better at. The third one is the one that just tortured my soul, and I know that sounds dramatic, and it is, but my goodness, this is the number our buddy Greg Brooks from SEC StatCat threw out the other day, and Mike Bratton, actually, SEC Mike on Twitter, if you guys, I'm sure, familiar with that SEC podcast, great dude. He sent it to me, and we're gonna get Greg on the show here soon. But this is, I'm trying to pull it up right now. This is the the number that he had. And like he has like very, very obscure like stats, so I love it even more. But this was the number. South Carolina has seen at least a tenth of its total plays result in a loss every year under Shane Beamer. A tenth of their total plays go for a loss, and they have every single year under Beamer. That's not a Beamer problem. That's an offensive line problem, and they have been very bad on the offensive line. We know that. We're not going to make any bones about it. But this is what they... So 2021, it was 10.5%, 14th in the SEC. 2022 is 11.9%, also 14th in the SEC. 2023, it went all the way up to 12.3%, which is 14th. And then last year, it was 10.8%, and it was 15th in the conference. It was second to last, right ahead of Oklahoma. So you cannot start out like I remember this in 2023, especially. Like, it kills an offense that if you're starting in 2nd and 12, 2nd and 11 right off the bat. Like, if you are not able to be on schedule and start working from like a bigger playbook where you need shorter yards to gain, you're at a massive disadvantage. The other scary part of this is you gave up. It was 10.8% of your plays resulted in a loss. You think about how many more it could have been if it wasn't for Sellers. Like, that number is staggering. 10% of your plays are not going forward. That's insane to me. Clark responds that it's amazing how things are trending up for South Carolina, because they are. But you look at Sellers, who had 30 broken tackles behind the line overall, sacks, scrambles, and design runs. That is a 46.2% clip for broken tackles on those plays. The SEC's overall leader had a minimum 50 attempts, had a 41.1% for a broken tackle percentage. He probably helped erase an additional 20 to 25 tackles for loss. You have got to figure out a way to have more positive plays, just plain and simple. You have to have more positive plays this year, and you cannot constantly see yourself starting backwards. Like, I thought they did a better job at times last year. Like, they weren't super penalized a ton, it didn't feel like, but this is something that has to improve, and it has to improve right now. I almost wish it was penalties. I mean, I don't, because that would drive me, pre-snap penalties drive me crazier more than anything. But like, that's a mental thing that you have to figure out. This is just like, you got to be more physical, and you have to be better than the guy across from you. So, man, this roster has gotten so much better top to bottom. It's awesome to watch, and they're so much better, it seems like, at almost every single position unit. They have to be better on the offensive line, just plain and simple. All right, that is all for today's show. I'm going to go have some hot dogs and enjoy the rest of my 4th of July. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your 4th of July as well. We'll be back tomorrow with the commitments, hopefully, of another 4-star recruit, and we'll talk about that and all things Gamecocks starting next week. Love you guys. Go Cox.